Story 1. When I was young, from the ages of 2 to 10, I lived on a 7-acre ranch. There was a small house in the front of the property where we lived, a huge grass yard and cabinet shop behind it, and an orchard in the very back full of walnut trees. My father was a carpenter that always worked in the shop, and my mother was a school teacher that was almost always busy because of their jobs and the fact that they were new to parenting. As I got older, they didn't really pay as much attention as they should have to. Where I would wander off, I would spend my days roaming around the yard, playing in the dirt and running through the walnut trees. I obviously didn't question my lack of supervision, as it was fun to explore this huge plot of land, and I just thought I was being a normal kid. When I was about 7 years old, my father surprised me with a brand new child-sized ATV. It wasn't one of the electric ones that you're probably picturing either. It was damn fast, gas-powered four-wheeler. Now at this point, a good amount of you are probably questioning why someone would give a gas-powered ATV to a 7-year-old child, but like I said, my parents were a bit reckless, and my dad just wanted me to have fun. Pretty much right after I got the thing, I learned how to ride it by myself and started going farther into and past the property than I ever had before. I now had a free ride to basically as far as my young self would let me go. Before turning back, I started riding through the orchards behind my house almost every day, and I loved it more than I had loved anything before. I would leave my house and be gone for hours. After a while, I gradually started roaming farther and farther away from my house. As I became more brazen and a little older, I would ride down this dirt path that leads past what I assumed was our neighbor's land and onto a ditch that held water. At the time, I just liked looking through the water as it flowed, and I felt like I was a little explorer. I honestly never contemplated that what I was doing could be the least bit dangerous, and I really don't think my parents knew how far I was riding. When I think back on it now, just the idea of riding a pretty dangerous piece of equipment far away from my house without my parents knowing where I was, and before cell phones existed, is pretty scary in itself, as I could have crashed or hit my head and no one would have been able to find me. However, luckily, this never happened and is not what this story is about. So one day, like every other, I was riding far away from home, and I passed by a man wearing a dirty white shirt, denim jeans, and a wicker farmer's hat. I remember it vividly, as it was the first person I'd seen in all the time I'd been out there. I remember the surprised look in his eyes as he stared at me while I rode past him. I had no reason to stop, and my parents had always taught me about stranger danger, so I kept going and forgot about it. On my way back home a couple hours later, I was coming up to the same spot, and it dawned on me that this is where I'd seen the man. I looked ahead, not expecting him to be there. As I said, it had been hours, yet as the trees parted there, he was. I really didn't think it was too weird, because I figured that he was either a farmer or a homebody, so I kept driving. Coming closer to where he was, he seemed friendly. To be honest, he had a big smile on his face, like he was happy to see me. To my 10-year-old self, I just thought he was a friendly guy, so I waved at him as I passed by, and he waved back. I continued on my way and drove home, not thinking much about it. I don't really remember how much time had passed between then and the next time I went riding, but it couldn't have been more than a couple days. Like usual, I took the same dirt road, past the same few orchards, to the same ditch full of water. I didn't think much about my previous encounter, so I hadn't been thinking about the stranger with the big smile. I was sitting on the edge of the ditch when I heard footsteps in the dirt coming up from behind me. Again, I remember this vividly because it was not a common occurrence to see anyone on this trail. I remember being more curious than scared, and turned around to see the same stranger with a smile. This time his smile seemed to be more of a toothy grin. He called out to me as he walked up, asking what my name was. In a heavy southern drawl, I told him with confidence that I wasn't really allowed to talk to strangers, to which he said, "That's a good idea, although you really shouldn't be out here all by yourself. It can be dangerous for a kid your age." I remember this striking me in the gut with a little bit of butterfly feeling. I wasn't afraid, but I felt uneasy. This piqued my curiosity, however, as I wondered what he meant, so I asked him. He continued to walk closer to me slowly and answered, "I heard they found a little boy out here just around your age. I think it was that ditch right there where he drowned." I would like to point out here that although my parents were reckless, they were not stupid. If there had been a drowning near our house that was reported, or there had been a story in the paper, they definitely wouldn't have let me out anymore. Anyways, he continued, Why don't you come with me, and I'll take you back to your parents? It's not safe out here for a kid your age. It's okay, I have my quad right here, I'll just ride back. I pointed over to the side of him where my quad was, but he didn't look. His eyes remained fixed on me. They were deep brown, almost black, and piercing into me. At this point I was scared, and I knew that this could be a bad situation. I was hoping that he was just a concerned old man, but there was no way I was going with him anymore. Where I got to my feet to start walking to my quad, to which the man said, "Should a kid your age be riding something that dangerous? Let's just put it in my truck, and I'll give you a ride back." "I don't see a truck," I said, looking around hoping to talk my way out of the situation. "Oh, it's right over there on my property. You can't see it from here," he said, his smile widening. "It's really okay, I'll just go now," I said, starting again to walk to my quad, but as I passed him, he reached and grabbed my arm. "You really shouldn't be out here," he said, staring me deep in the eyes. "It's not safe for little kids. Let me go, you're hurting me," I shouted, starting to panic, but this only made him grip tighter. "Maybe you don't deserve to go back home. What kind of parents would let their kid out here all alone? Maybe you should come home with me, and I'll take care of you." At this point, I was about to piss my pants. I was freaking out and started to scream. I don't know if I was saying anything, I just know I was screaming as loud as I ever had before. This only seemed to anger him, as his once toothy grin turned to a face of anger. He put his hand over my face, and I took this opportunity to bite his finger as hard as I could. I still remember the taste of blood, so I know I hurt him pretty bad. Thankfully, this caught him off guard as he finally let me go. I knew this was my one chance to get away from this weirdo, so I booked it to my quad as he winced in pain. "You little get the over here," he cried in anger. I knew I didn't have much time, so I jumped on my quad and turned the key as fast as I could. It started up, and just as I pulled the gas handle, I felt a hand start to grab my neck. Luckily, he didn't have a grip yet. As I was already starting to drive away, I punched it and Ned the hell out of there. At this point, all I could hear was the sound of my quad, so I wasn't sure if he was running after me, but I wasn't going to look as I could possibly crash and be out of luck. I drove down that dirt path as fast as the quad would go, probably the fastest I've ever driven it. When I got home, I peeled out into the dirt and ran into the house, hoping to God my mom was home. I burst into her room bawling, and there she was. She asked me what was wrong, but I couldn't talk yet as I was so afraid. I just kept bawling. I think I cried for a good 30 minutes before I could summon up the strength to stop and tell her what happened. I remember the fear in her eyes as I described what happened. She pulled me close to her and hugged me as hard as she ever had. The next day, I talked to a police officer and recounted the story of what transpired. I honestly don't remember much after this, as I think I started to block it out. It's not really something a 10-year-old wants to think about. Needless to say, they never let me off the property again. Man, my dad started drinking, and we lost a house soon after this anyway, so I didn't have to live there much longer. Recently, I was thinking about that day after I started trying to remember various parts of my childhood. My parents had never told me what happened after the cops were called, and I had never really asked because I tried not to think about it. So yesterday I went to my mother's house and asked her if they ever found the guy, considering he had to live pretty close to our property. She was kind of startled by the question because we hadn't talked about this in 15 years. She paused for a minute, as if pondering whether to tell me, and said we didn't have any neighbors out that way. It was all corporate-owned land, and the description you gave didn't match any of the neighbors in the other direction. We called the cops, and they went to search where you told us you were, but the guy was long gone by the time they got there. They looked around the property and found an abandoned house that hadn't been used in years since the land was purchased. When they looked inside, they could tell that he'd been staying there. Apparently he had left his stuff behind. We never told you this because you were way too young. But one of the things they found was a black grocery bag. It had a roll of duct tape and a hunting knife inside. Thanks, Mom, but did I really need to know that story too? Okay, so the offense happened when I was in 5th grade about 4 years ago, and my revenge happened in E8th grade just about 1 year ago, so I was in 5th grade. Almost at the end of the year, I was pumped because I just finished all my subjects with 100%, no points lost at all, which also meant I was at the top of my grade. Also, I had gotten 242 at my mathematics map testing. For those who don't know, map is measurement of academic progress, it really doesn't do anything. Teachers just use it to know how much one knows, and in the program we used for our map testing, 242 was a really high score in elementary. What is expected of a 5th grade genius is in the 230s range. This is important for later, so I was just minding my own business going back to class after break when this 5th grade teacher intercepted me. Now you need to understand that we had 4 classes like most schools with an ABCD system. I was lucky and got 5B, which has the coolest teacher he genuinely loved. Teaching 5A, however, was unfortunate. He treated his students like trophies, taking credit for their high grades, but as I've heard from my friends over there, he barely taught. He would come to school strolling in really late, shout at the students for no apparent reason, just sit there at his desk while the good kids who actually cared worked and the others just sat there. If anyone made a peep, detention and a disciplinary referral. Those things, if the offense was serious enough, could ban you from entering any college. He even threatened some poor kid who did nothing wrong with putting in a disciplinary referral in for drug possession. What the he wanted to accuse a 10-year-old with drug possession, but that's not our story. Anyways, that never really liked me. I think it was because I had such high marks and he couldn't credit himself for them. So anyways, back to the story where I bumped into him. So sorry, sir, I mumbled, and then just scooted past him. After that, for some obscure reason, he became pissed off. Come back, he shouted, me being dumb and scared. Stupidly came back. He told me to enter his class, which was full with his students. He then started to shout at me about being disrespectful, and he was so mad that I was shaking in my size 3 shoes. What he said after was what really stuck to me. You know what, in South Africa I am in my legal right to hurt you with my knife. He then proceeded to get a knife out of the top drawer and put it against my skin, breaking it a little. We weren't in South Africa, we were in Saudi Arabia, but he was from South Africa. Then he pointed at another kid and shouted, look at this kid, he's got 236 at his map testing. That means he's a genius. Try to get higher than him, smartass. You think you're so smart, huh? You're just a spoiled little brat. 5A took the test before 5B, so I didn't set the record for 242 yet. After that I took the map test and he proctored us. He kept smirking at me, kicking my seat and other stuff until I finished the test and got 242. Then I looked at him in the eye and said, looks like I'm a genius too, but that wasn't the revenge, you see. I thought it was some hazing ritual to see if I was tough enough for middle school. I know, stupid, but remember I was 9 years old at the time. Fast forward 3 years to 8th grade. I did not speak of this to anybody, and the kids who were there were too scared to speak up. Anyways, I chose to tell my best friend. He was horrified and told me to report him immediately. I've realized what he did traumatized me. I was constantly afraid that any adult had a knife up their sleeve and was about to start shouting at me, so I set myself for revenge. I was not just going to report him, which would get him fired. I went to everybody at that class documenting all the horrible things he did with over 30 kids, saying the same thing with a model student, vouching for them. The principal had no choice but to comply, and he knew of the constant trust issues I was having, so he fired him and assured me that he was banned from any teaching position in the country. I live in the deep mountains. I'm talking a 45-minute drive to the nearest. Story 3. Small town. We are nearly completely isolated and surrounded on all sides by thousands of acres of national forest. It is the real deal to live there, and not uncommon for large predators to roam through our property. Grizzlies, lions, wolves, and all that. To help combat this, my wife and I have several large shepherd dogs that roam the property. They do an excellent job rerouting wildlife around the property, marking and just being good survival companions. If something goes bump in the night, either the dogs freak out or they don't. After a while you learn to interpret their barking and growling. From bats hit panic when a bear's outside to annoy I'm trying to sleep, yapping when a raccoon gets in the trash. Still, you never get fully used to them barking in the night. There's always a what if in the back of your head. Well, I let them inside to eat at night or when it's too cold to be outside. One December evening my wife and I had them in and we were watching Planet Earth. No big deal, we're all a big happy family gathered around the TV. My shepherds love to watch the television, see all the cool animals. We had watched several episodes and they never made a peep when they saw sharks, elephants, Komodo hyenas, whatever came up. Then came the mountain episode and they were on high alert but still calm until they cut to a night vision scene of a mountain lion stalking in the dark. They all lost it, nearly knocked over the TV trying to attack it. Our youngest pup, who's still 80 pounds, jumped on our laps and was visibly shaking and full tilt, barking and growling. It was unnerving to say the least. We get lions around here. But to see how keen the dogs were on just a clip of one really demonstrated not only the fact that they were intimately familiar with the threat, but that they instinctively knew what one looked like preying in the night. It was an inherent threat, and they not only knew it but were scared to death of it. We'd watched hundreds of hours of shows with them and never once got that reaction before. All right, thanks for sticking with me this far. Here's the your pants scary part of the story. I really don't even like writing it because the whole thing still freaks us out to this day. We are again all inside on a cold winter night. My wife and I sit down to watch some TV and the dogs gather around. Intently, I decide to throw on a stupid alien documentary my friend recommended. The dogs watch closely but seem normal. Then the documentary shows some supposed pictures of grings lurking in the night. The dogs lose it worse than the mountain lions. Holy, we have to turn off the TV to stop the dogs from destroying the house, and even then they're really freaked out, tucked tails, whimpering the works. Again, we watch TV with them all the time and nothing has ever got them riled up, let alone full panic, except for these two instances. After we calmed the dogs down, my wife and I sat in silence for a long while as the horror slowly washed over us. That what if when you hear the dogs freaking out in the middle of the night, I apparently would be aliens. Not cool. So I recently had a few encounters with a delivery guy. First was he asked, "Story for me, are you Amy Beck from 12 Willow Street? Greet you moved while smiling." Creepily, I thought he was just a delivery guy that was trying to do small talk, so I brushed him off. I live alone, so I thought I was just overthinking by being creeped out. Then I realized after I thought about it that he was my neighbor in my previous address. He struck up a lot of conversation with me, saying he knows one of my friends. I don't like talking to strangers, so I didn't talk with him long, but it stayed with me because I felt comfortable with him, almost like he was dangerous. After that I was going out, and I saw him again delivering to my neighbor, and I ignored him trying to walk by. He saw me and recognized me even though I was wearing a mask, and asked the same question again after that. Due to me not going out much, I didn't see him as often. There was this one time he was standing in front of my neighbor's house, but I just walked by. Then I saw him in my Facebook friend requests and I just ignored him again, but I was obviously creeped out, so I told my friend that. He said he knew. At first my friend said she didn't know anyone with that name, but his last name made her recognize him as a son of a family friend. They never talked. His family didn't know he was working as a delivery guy, and he was laid off because he became obsessed with his boss, who was much older than his mom. I also lost my keys, so I asked my landlord for a replacement. I didn't think much of it until I got home to my door open. Obviously, I was cautious, but there was no one at my apartment, so I sighed in relief, thinking maybe I had left it open. I work night shift, so sometimes my mind is all over the place. Now that I'm thinking about it, I overlooked a lot of things, and I'm thinking of installing CCTV in front of my apartment. I'm still scared though because he knows my address. For an update, my friend told me to report him to the police, but I'm too scared because they might just let him go and he'll take revenge on me. She also told me that he might be doing drugs as told by his family, since he was acting really suspicious, and for the last update so far I haven't encountered him anymore, though I don't really go out much. I said my delivery name to my boyfriend's, maybe because his family knew and talked to him. I haven't caught anything strange around my house either. I think I'm in a safe zone now. I'm going to move to a different city in a few months after this, probably with my dog. My boyfriend is another problem since he can't move in because his parents won't let him. If only he was worried about me as you guys. Maybe I'll just go get another boyfriend. I live on a main road in kind of a story 5 sketchy area, not completely unsafe, but an area I've posted about on here because of some of the creepy stuff that has happened to me, but this one is the creepiest. I'd gone out at around 604 food. It recently snowed and my city sucks at sidewalk plowing, so it's an Arctic exhibition for a few days, walking through deep snow and ice. As I trudged through, I passed a man who lives in my neighborhood, and he can act strange. He walks oddly and can be pretty creepy at times. He passes me one way, I pass him the other, and we go separate ways. After I got my food, walking back, I thought I saw him coming my way. I quietly out loud said, "Oh man, not him," but then slowly faded away. This person walked off the path towards the church on the street. This church has a big LED sign which you can hide behind. As I got closer, I realized it was a younger man about my age with a gray hoodie and beige cargo pants. He was acting strange. He walked like a Disney cartoon character, and his face had a big smile with eyes shifting at a million MILF. Then I saw, as he looked at me, approach, quickly pulled his hood over his head and stepped beside the sign, obstructing my view of him. I don't know if he saw me see him, but I realized what might be going down. I just stopped on the path from the snow. It would have been too much to turn around and head back. My boots were getting sucked into the slushy, snowy path. I waited for a few moments, and he must have realized then that I knew, because he came back out from the sign and went up to the church windows. The church is also a community center, and there's a room facing the street that looks kind of like a dance room with a large mirror. He took off his hood and started fake dancing around in front of the window. He kept looking back as if his little distraction would have been enough to end my interest in her what the is happening situation, but it didn't. It disturbed me even more when he realized this. We made a sort of shuffle around each other. His smile disappeared, and he kept trying to inch his way towards me, but he got bed down in the same slush that I stopped in after I got farther away. I just watched as he put his hood up again and walked away normally now towards the restaurant and mall I had just come from. This area gets stranger and stranger every day. My wife passed away after many years battling an awful degenerative disease. Story 6. We were married 13 years, and after several months of not being able to find my footing, I made a decision to move out of state and start a new chapter, to force myself into beginning a new life. I was immediately validated by getting my first job in over 8 years. Things slowly begin to start moving forward, and after prodding from my friends, I signed up for a mobile dating app. One, met a couple of people that I didn't really have a lot of chemistry with. The first date I went on was cordial, but not of any consequence. She wound up asking me to fix a laptop she had. The second person I met called me, and we decided to meet for Chinese food. Since I didn't have a car, I walked at 5 or 6 blocks, but not before it started to rain. She'd already sat at a table and was waiting for me to arrive. We exchanged pleasantries, and soon it's all about her divorce and why she lost her kids and all of the legal proceedings of her current cases. Okay, and then she would pause, clasp my hands on the table, turn her head, lean in a bit, and say, "But that's nothing compared to what you went through. Tell me about your dead wife." Like clockwork, she would ramble on about the craziest stuff, about how they're all trying to get her, then stop her crazy babbling and ask about my details and how bad it felt, and my poor wife's decline and condition. I had only put in my profile that I was a widower, nothing else. It was at this point that I got seriously weirded out, deep in my gut. Fully weirded out. What I couldn't figure out was she trying to mimic what she thought a sensitive person would be like? Or was there a possibility that she wanted to know those painful graphic details for other perverted reasons? I made sure short work of the entree and paid the entire check. She called my phone a few times, and I made several excuses why I was unable to meet again. I got a couple of calls from block numbers that didn't say anything, but they stopped after a month or two. I'm blessed and remarried, but I'm so grateful I ned the right out of there and never messed with this lady again. Story 7. I'm a thin, athletic white guy, 5 feet 9 inches, not the most intimidating presence, but I happen to have a nice bulky coat on that probably added some uncertainty. Also my savior, because, as mentioned, not a bear would be my situational awareness. Anyway, story time. It's 2:30 a.m. or so, and it's my favorite time to do laundry. There's a 24/7 auto electronic laundromat right by my apartment. While there's employees there during business hours, there's roughly an 8-hour stretch where I'm the only one who will be in the building. I'll occasionally see an old-timer around 4:30 to 5 a.m., but usually only on Sundays, which I avoid. It's literally a half-mile from my place. I sit down there. It's a cold night, well below freezing. I toss in my clothes, CLO soap, and swipe the laundry card. I'm on my way to grab gas milk deposit at the bank and back to my apartment to bring some things inside for my car. I do some dishes and decide to head back down. I'm usually playing a video game while running my laundry, or just procrastinate. My stuff will sit for up to an hour. Sometimes there's no one there, so hey, not this time. It's now just shy of 3 a.m., and I get the notification that my laundry is done on my phone as I'm seconds from the laundromat parking lot. I pull in and scan the parking lot. No one here. I proceed to walk in through the front door and immediately notice someone come into the building from the far side door. A guy maybe 6'T with two hoodies on, both hoods up, most of his face concealed. It's unlocked and often used when the place is busy, but there were no cars there. There is a bathroom in the place as I walked to my machines, which is about dead center in the building, I thought. This person had quickly bolted back outside, then I noticed him again, I think. He had ducked still just by the door, mind you. We had 2 islands of laundry machines between us. He starts up near the wall, which is on my left. I'm watching him at this point. I was hoping he'd need to use the bathroom, but he hurried past it, not a run but a very quick walk. Now he's on the opposite side near the corner of the laundry machine, stripped maybe 15 feet away and just out of my line of sight. For a moment I didn't want to trigger the guy or appear scared, so I continued shoveling my wet clothes into the laundry cart. The adrenaline begins trickling. Hair on the back of my neck goes up before rounding the corner and crossing back into my vision. Here hesitated. I eventually turned my head to rotate back, and he kind of popped into the picture. He glanced over and we made eye contact as I reached into my coat pocket to fist my keys. He continues up the aisle and makes a left back out the side door. I have a little blade on my keys, so I popped that open and proceeded to toss my in the dryer while scanning my surroundings the entire time. Eventually the time comes to go outside. The front doors are automatic, so I had both hands free. I literally walked out of the place wielding a knife, shaking with adrenaline, but it was a ghost town. I proceeded to my car and went home. I drove my wife into work and I waited until about 6 o'clock to go grab my clothes. My conclusion is that I'm nearly positive that this person scoped out the laundry mat. My machine has a digital timer for the current wash. This guy entered the building within a minute of it going off and me pulling into the lot at 3 a.m. a night when it was 20 degrees Fahrenheit out. Coincidence maybe, but I was scared. Either way, thanks for listening. I would love to hear your thoughts. This happened in July. I believe it was around 1 a.m. and it was still about Story 8. 80 degrees Fah outside, and where I live AC isn't very common, so I was sitting in the living room with all the windows and doors open. I head out to smoke, and since everything was open and I didn't want the house to smell like smoke, I walked down the driveway and sat on the curb. There was a man standing on the same side of the street, but a block down, just staring at me, and I got really uncomfortable, so I got up and crossed the road. The way my triplex is set up is there is a 3-car driveway, then a few stairs up that lead into the yard, and then my door to the right, my neighbors straight ahead, and some more stairs to my other neighbors upstairs. I live somewhere with a lot of homeless people, and they'll come up the driveway to look in our trash for cans or whatever, and that's fine. They never go up past the steps. So I'm standing on the other side of the road and I watch the man stand and stare at me, and then he proceeds to walk all the way into my yard, and I start to panic as I didn't lock the doors and all the windows were open. So I start to walk down the street and I see a man who looks normal, and I stop him and ask if he could just pretend to know me. In retrospect, this wasn't my brightest decision, but whatever. So me and this man are standing there just talking, and I'm explaining the situation, and we're both just smoking a cigarette and we're looking at my house. I'm currently stood a few houses down. The man keeps peeking around the tree lines next to my place. He peeks around the corner a few more times and eventually walks up to me. I'm scared shitless and I'm shaking, and he asks me for a cigarette. I go to hand him one and he says, "Why are you shaking? Are you scared?" And I said, "No, have a great night." He walks away and the other guy stands there for a little longer with me, and the scary man starts peeking around another corner just staring at me again. The guy I'm with walks me to my house, and I shut all the windows and doors, and I just dealt with the heat. I'm grateful to that random guy, and I don't know what I would have done if he wasn't there. Story 9. Coming down a mountain trail at dusk, I've realized I may have lingered at the summit a bit too long. By my estimation, I have perhaps a bit less than an hour to the trailhead. I'm alone, but know the trail well and have a headlamp on me. Just as dusk fades into a moonless pitch-black night, I'm rounding a corner and freeze instinctively. EY shine is reflecting back at me from the darkness. About 30 yards away, the vague outline of a large solitary black bear emerges from the forest and steps onto the trail facing me. It stares at me and I stare back. Black bears live in this area. I've known this and seen them twice during the day on previous trips. Nothing like being face to face with one at night, though. I raise my hands above my head, making myself as big as possible. I scream long and loud, as guttural and fierce a man's scream I can muster. The bear pauses and chuff at me briefly, looking behind it at the forest it came from. It then slowly and casually turns Away from me, walking back into the forest from where it came, the crunching sound of leaves underfoot of the bear grows quieter until the only thing I can hear is my pounding heartbeat. I realize I now have to go in the same direction as the bear went. Maybe a minute or so goes by, and I sprint as I pass the point where the bear stood. I glance at the woods while not stopping and seeing nothing. Shortly after, while running, I look back behind me, back up the trail to make sure I'm not followed. I continued to periodically glance behind me while running down the mountain. I endure maybe 30 long minutes of running in pitch darkness down this mountain with my heart at 130 beats per minute. Thankfully, I didn't trip or fall and injure myself. I made it back to the trailhead safely. A few years back, I was driving home after taking my dad to the airport. Story 10. For a late flight, it was already dark when I left the airport, and I still had a 3-hour drive home. A few hours into the drive, I get recalculated to some windy back road highway. There were no cars or streetlights, and so it was a pretty dark and creepy road. As I turned a curve, I noticed a black car come out of nowhere and start to ride my bumper. Then the blue lights. The road was so dark I had to try for a minute to find a spot with at least a few small lights where I could pull over. The officer came up to my window and asked me if I knew that my tags were expired. I thought it was kind of odd because I was driving my mom's car and she's usually pretty on top of things like that, but it was more so the way he talked that made me uneasy. He was speaking pretty fast, like he was in a hurry or something, as he's standing at my window before he even gets my license or registration. His radio beeps and tells me that he's got to go on another call. He practically runs back to the car and speeds off. I head back home, half weirded out, half thanking God that I didn't get a ticket. I kind of brush it off until I go outside to my car the next day and find that my tags were not due to expire for 2 more months. It could have been a simple mistake, but I couldn't help recalling how weird the whole incident was. He could have misread the number, but looking back, I wonder what could have happened if he was someone with bad intentions. From then on, I pull over only in well-populated areas, and if a safe option is unavailable, I call 911 to make them aware. So my grandma and I decided to drive from Illinois to Oklahoma City to Story 11. Visit my dad. We made it there, and I got to see a lot of my family I'd not seen in years. I lived in Oklahoma for 6 years. On the way home, my grandma asked me to pull over at the next rest stop, and I obliged. It was in the middle of a bright spring day. We both got out and headed to the ladies' room. I noticed this guy standing behind a tree just staring. It gave me the creeps, but I didn't give it another thought. My grandma gave me a shout telling me she was going back to the car. I finished up and headed outside. The creepy guy was still standing behind the tree. I walked a little faster and he started pacing me. I was about to scream when a family came around the corner to use the bathroom. It was enough to make him leave me alone. We got back on the road, and about a mile down there was a roadblock. They were stopping everyone because they were looking for a seriously deranged psychopath. I told them to check the rest stop in hopes that they would catch him. It gives me the chills to think about it today. I was only 21 at the time, but I wasn't naive. I thank that family, even though they don't know what happened. If you have a scary story you would like me to read in an upcoming video, this is one way to help me guarantee variety in the stories I share. You can email me or post it to my subreddit. I'll drop the details in the video description. Thank you all for listening, and a special thanks to my patrons and channel members who now have early access to Adri videos as well as other behind-the-scenes content. Thank you to Angela Reeves, Sher, AGI, Nathan Shadwick, Nicholas Johnson, Samantha Place, Cheryl Duckworth, Scout Mom 405, Z Harris, Unladylike 13, Ventura, California, Elizabeth Mays, Alexia Tuttle, Marshana Rainey, Woe upon Mary, Wright, Jessica Copperfield, Zoe D. Danielle Shaw, Jane Wiggins, Tara Harris, Mary Rye, Cy Townsend, M. Dessa Edmondson, Kimmy L. Wendy Maris, Confessions of a Cleaner, Megan Abrams, Miss Tycoon Stephen, Sloan Christina Myway, Ashley Bray, Madisa Felter, Danielle Tina Marie Heckman, Amal Garner, Lisa Ratford, Deborah Malay, Connie, Sue T. Adwell, Diana Johnston, Vampy Debs, Jasmine Davis, Erica Air, Fox Mulder, Ram Beltron, Tina, Nick Bosey, Sarah C.H., Neil Kavanaugh, Tiara Sunders, Timothy Stratton, Jennifer Jenkins, LYD Rash, Maribel Deluna, Michael O.M. Ollie, Marissa, Kuro, Amber, Hops, King, Slim, Justin Beast, Gillespie, Joy, Dana, J. Bartle, Anna, Stephanie, McLaren, Lumine, Kami Skin, Crawler, Adara Bella, Play 2006, Michelle Welchman Dana B. Lisa McDonald Clary Scott Madison C. Wasp Sting Jennifer J. Ashley Lily Pack Lee Taya Wyatt Gina. Laura J.K. 6 Venzio Anna Joey Big GSC Tanya. Spaghetti Willow King Matthew October Gypsy Lisa Ally Thomas Build With Me. Letitia Fran Debs Insomnic Cats. Stephanie Summer Rebecca Tyra This Bad. Kitty Your Pay Piece Dilly Lanning Tripping Falls Through History Samantha Erica. Alyssa Tracy Killian's Place April James. Arburn Jen Joy Handout Pegasus Genesis Karen Kitu V. Barry LJ Fiona Xbox Scott I Like Booty Monica Level A. Chris Donna Holly Spry Kimber Jasmine. Centik Heather Haven Kitty Cat Luna 2 ADHD Aurora Janice Cinderella Baby. Borderline Betty Lady Draco Erica Nicole Snowball Raina Melanie The Honeybee 987. Pretty Girl 215 Ryan Brooke Wendy Grafty Kel Tina. Dina Vampy Debs Patricia Amber Krista. Brenda Absent Alice Chrissy K Spider's Web. H Lala Andrea Sue Monique Shaw Gorman. Emma Lisa Sigma Cube X Greg Chelsea. Amanda James Sam ZY Sarah S.E. Austin Tan Lil Smart. Jenny Gabrielle Fire 5 Sarah P. James Gargano JMA Allen. Monica Level A and Alex I hope you're doing well guys. I'll see you all on the next one.